She stood by the kitchen window, hands soaked in lukewarm dishwater, watching the boy next door carry boxes into his new place. He was younger, mid-20s maybe, tall, lean, and moved with a calm that didn't belong to this rushed world. Her husband would be late again. He always was. 7 years of marriage, and somewhere along the line, the conversations had become transactional. Groceries, bills, deadlines, no eye contact, no warmth. She told herself not to notice the boy's arms flex as he lifted another box. But she did. It wasn't lust that stirred her, it was the ache of being noticed, something she hadn't felt in years. She hadn't expected him to glance up at her window. But he did. And he smiled. That smile stayed with her all evening. Dinner was cold when her husband finally walked in. A half-hearted kiss on the cheek, then his face buried in his phone. Tough day, he mumbled. No follow-up, no questions about hers. Just silence. Days passed. She started anticipating the boys' routines. Morning jogs, afternoon stretches on the porch. Always shirtless, always alone. She hated how often she looked. She hated how much she wanted him to look back. One humid evening, thunder cracked across the sky. Rain hammered the rooftops. She was folding laundry when the knock came. Soft, unsure, she opened the door, and there he was, soaked, breathless, phone in hand. "Power's out," he said. "Can I borrow your charger?" She hesitated. Every instinct said no, but loneliness whispered otherwise. She stepped aside. He walked in, and for a moment, the air between them changed, like something unspoken had finally entered the room. She offered him a towel. He smiled again, and this time, she smiled back. He sat at the edge of the couch, phone plugged in, hair still damp from the rain. She brought him a mug of tea, trying not to notice the way his eyes scanned the room, then rested on her. "Thanks," he said, fingers brushing hers for a second too long. It wasn't flirtation, it was awareness. A quiet acknowledgement neither of them spoke aloud. He asked questions her husband never bothered with. What books she liked, whether she painted, what made her laugh. She caught herself laughing twice that night, real, unforced, and unfamiliar. When the lights flickered back on, he didn't rush to leave. They sat in a bubble of quiet, and when he finally stood, he looked at her like she was someone worth remembering. The next day, she wore her hair differently. It wasn't intentional, or maybe it was. He waved from across the fence. She waved back, pulse quick. By the third wave, it had become routine. They talked more, short exchanges that grew longer. He told her about his job, his dreams, his last breakup. She listened like she hadn't listened to anyone in years. He made her feel seen. Her husband, meanwhile, stayed busy. Meetings, emails, absent even when present. One Saturday, he complimented her dress. She muttered a thank you and turned away quickly, but her stomach fluttered. That evening, she stood longer in front of the mirror, wondering what he saw. Another storm rolled in. The power died again. Another knock. This time, he held a candle and a half-empty bottle of wine. "I thought maybe you didn't like being alone in the dark." She let him in, not because she was lonely, but because he made her forget she was. And for the first time, forgetting felt better than remembering. She poured the wine with a steady hand, though everything inside her trembled. He sat across from her, eyes soft, voice lower than usual. He spoke about silence, the kind that fills a house when no one's really listening. She nodded. She knew that kind well. The candle between them flickered, casting shadows that felt more honest than daylight. She brought up her husband, not to defend, but to explain. The routine, the fading, the quiet loss of something that once burned. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "I just feel like I stopped existing somewhere along the way." He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer cliches. He just looked at her with something close to understanding. Then he reached out, his hand covering hers, warm and firm. It wasn't suggestive. It was grounding. She didn't pull away. The silence returned, but this one felt different, charged, intimate. When she finally leaned in, it wasn't a decision. It was gravity. Their lips met with the gentleness of a question. When he deepened the kiss, she let him. Not because she didn't care, but because, for once, she did. Clothes became an afterthought. Time blurred. It wasn't frantic. It was slow, intentional, like they both needed to prove they were still capable of being wanted, of being known. Her name in his voice sounded new. His breath on her skin made her forget the years she spent waiting to feel alive again. In the early light, she woke tangled in sheets and confusion. He was asleep, face peaceful, unaware of the storm inside her. She sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. What they'd done couldn't be undone. But for those hours, she hadn't felt invisible. And that, more than guilt, was what brought tears to her eyes. She avoided the living room for days, afraid of the memories stitched into the silence. Her husband noticed the distance but didn't ask. Maybe he was used to it. Maybe he didn't want the answer. She cooked, cleaned, smiled when necessary. But something inside her had shifted, something she couldn't fold back into routine. The boy next door didn't come by again. No texts, no knocks, just quiet. She spotted him once from the upstairs window, packing a bag into his car. He didn't look up, neither did she. Whatever they shared had dissolved without drama, just vanished like the storm that brought it. But its echo stayed. Her husband asked if she was okay. She looked at him, studied the familiar lines of his face. She didn't hate him, she just didn't feel close to him anymore. I don't know, she replied. It was the most honest thing she'd said in months. She thought about confessing, about burning it all down to see what rose from the ashes. But when she imagined his reaction, shock, anger, heartbreak, she went quiet again. Some truths don't fix anything. Some only bruise deeper. The boy moved out quietly, like he'd never really arrived. The only thing he left behind was the candle, still on her shelf. She never lit it again. But she didn't throw it away either. Some nights, she sat on the porch alone, wine in hand,